The other reading was Gender and Climate Change, Induced Conflict in Pastoral Communities, Case Studies. And in this one, a key area, this one will be way shorter, I apologize for the other long one. One thing was on page 85, and it talked about the impact of climate change are likely to be spatially variable in developing countries. Again, words, right? So if a woman was kidnapped, raped and abused, and put into servitude, and then she got out of it and she's healing, we wouldn't say she's developing. We would say she's recovering. So when you change the woman to a country, a nation, or people, when you go into these countries, we call it colonialism, and we rape, pillage, and murder, right? And now we're backing off and letting them, they're not developing because it wasn't like they haven't been trying to. We prevented it, Western cultures, right? They're recovering from the abuse that went on for generations. And so that's just another one of my words matter. And it talks about the climate variability and change results in fundamental alterations to the ecosystem structures and functions. And it talks about how it messed with their use of land and livelihood. I think that's important because if you have a country that's mostly agricultural or animal-based, when you have climate change and now you have a drought, which is going to cause a famine, now the drought messes with you because you need water. The famine messes with us because we need water. But it also messes with our pockets because we can't feed our livestock, and our livestock is dying off before we could sell it and make money. And it's not you could just say, oh, well, just eat it. Well, okay, but you still need to buy other things, right? You still need to buy the stuff to cook it. You still need to buy the heat or the electricity, depending on where you are. And because they're mobile a lot, you still need to buy the stuff needed to survive in these harsh conditions. So it's not as simple as, oh, well, just eat it. It just doesn't work like that. And I was reading about the pastoralism, and it reminded me of our cowboys after World Wars, where after, and the time, not after World Wars, but after war, when they came back and they didn't have anything, cowboys were on the rise because they were used to rugged lives, used to living in crazy environments because they were at war for so long, and they couldn't fit in. And people confuse that. Like, you can't send me to war this week and then tell me to retire and just become like a teacher or a nurse or something and be in these jobs. Like, I didn't just live through war. Some people can't recover from that. And so they found jobs that fit them. So when I was reading this and it was talking about the livestock, it's their major source of livelihood and their food security and how it's used to feed a lot of people. But the lifestyle is most adaptive to harsh environments and involves moving animals, exchanging animals, and selling animals. It just made me think of our version of cowboys. Guess it's nothing deep, though. It's just a FYI. And then looking at coping and adaptation strategies, I think that's important because on an anthropological point, I remember us talking once about studying primates helps us better understand how we need to adjust. And I think when we read how other cultures are adjusting, because they're feeling it more because they don't have the money to recover easier, right? Like the video we watched where it was like, oh, we're getting floods, so let's just lift the roads. Everybody can't do that. Which we saw in that video where it was broker people, they didn't lift the roads. People in poor areas just had jacked up, flooded, toxic streets. And so I was feeling like coping with this, and it talks about diversifying their livelihood, which I think is important. Like, don't just be on animals, because what happens if that area of the drought, the flood, now your animals are dying, and now you have nothing, but diversifying it, which goes into how they were talking about mobility and coping strategies and gender issues and how they do it, whereas traditionally women were home and the men take care of that stuff. It talks about due to women playing an active role on page 93 to ensure family survival through engagement and diversified income generating activities, and ensure that if our animals are dying, we can either try to barter real quick, and if not, at least we know we have income coming in from other directions. So I thought that was cool. And then going back to mobility and coping, when we read about mitigating suffering or losing or adapting, it reminded me of that section there. And anything else that was key? Discussing the future of what they're going to be was cool too, including the conflicts of gender vulnerability. And we see that in America, right? Like we see where right now men aren't going to college as much as women are. And so we're getting the big jobs. And I have friends who notice a difference. I have a friend who, when she works full time, she almost doubles what her husband makes, because she is an accountant and he's a cop or active or reservist. And so the issue becomes, now that you make more money, then there's issues. But when she went to part-time because they had their baby, she was like, it was a little more peaceful because he felt like he had more, say, because he made more than I did now. And then when she got sick of him forgetting who she was, and the baby grew up and became 4, there's a bunch of different things, she went back to work. And so I could see how, especially in cultures where there is a dominance in the male, when you're focused on the cattle as a male, but she's doing all these other things, and now your cattle's dead, but she's bringing in that money. I have personally too experienced the issue of making more or outranking or out-adapting the male counterpart and their male egos. So I found that interesting, and I guess triflingly comforting and understanding, like, you're not alone in these things, because I deal with that a lot. Being in the military, I never married, and some of it was because a man in the military, if a man's in the military and a wife and family follow you, it's cool. But change the gender interaction and conflict, no man wants to follow me around the world, and I'm bringing the dough until you can find a job. And if you do, it's not a career, so you're probably not making what I make in that dynamic. So I think it's an issue of equality, gender-wise, and understanding culture has to change and adapt in order to minimize the suffering. And I think if we get past that and focus on, this is our family and this is our money and this is our bank account, which I know it's easier said than done, it could change the game and, increase the quality of life for those who are affected.